Have you ever had one of those arguments about what World War II plane was the most adaptable? Have you ever wondered which airframe had the most upgrades during the war? When you think about it, it's an understandable debate, with so many airframes to choose from. Welcome back to the Jaxom Talks channel. So who takes the crown of the most adaptable and upgradable airframe of the Second World War? Was it the mighty Spitfire? Was it the Mosquito with its many roles? These are both strong contenders, but there is only one true leader of the pack. The Messerschmitt Bf-109. It's the single most produced fighter aircraft in history, with a staggering 34,852 airframes built, including foreign licenses. But those numbers, as impressive as they are, barely scratch the surface of the true story of the 109. Today, we aren't just talking production volume. We're diving deep into the engineering philosophy, the system that made the Bf-109 the ultimate aviation chameleon of the Second World War. We're going to unravel the complex web of designations, suffixes, and field kits. It ensured this single airframe often just changed its identity, its role, and its performance profile, faster than the Allied designs could roll out a new major upgrade. The question isn't just how many 109s were built. It's how many different aircraft were packed into that single airframe designation. We're talking about hundreds of uniquely functional variants, culminating in the ironic spectacle of this German interceptor flying decades later, powered by the very engine of its British rival. Its first major test was the Battle of Britain. Here, the Bf-109E, or Emil variant, went head-to-head with the legendary Spitfire and Hurricane. It proved to be a deadly adversary, particularly its fuel-injected DB601 engine. This allowed it to perform negative G maneuvers. If they tried to follow, it would cause the British engines to stall. This gave German pilots a distinct advantage, allowing them to push the nose down and dive away from trouble in a way their opponents couldn't immediately follow. However, the Battle of Britain also exposed one of its key weaknesses: its limited range. It could only fight over London for a mere 10 minutes before needing to turn for home, a critical limitation that hampered its effectiveness as a bomber escort. This challenge spurred the next stage of its evolution. The Luftwaffe needed a fighter that could not only defend German skies but also project power across vast distances. This led to the development of the F-Series, the Friedrich. Many pilots, including famous aces like Adolf Galland, considered the Friedrich the high-water mark of the 109's design. It was a cleaned-up, aerodynamically refined version. The engine cowling was more streamlined, the wingtips were rounded. This made the Bf-109F a true pilot's machine, beautifully balanced, fast, and a formidable dogfighter. It was a purebred hunter, and on the Eastern Front, it reigned supreme in the opening stages of Operation Barbarossa, racking up an astonishing number of victories. To understand the Bf-109E's adaptability, we have to look back at its birth in the mid-1930s. Willy Messerschmitt and Robert Lusser designed an interceptor built around ruthless efficiency. Their design priorities were simple: lightness and speed. They pioneered the all-metal monocoque structure and famously consolidated parts to save weight, delivering a formidable early fighter armed with the liquid-cooled, inverted V12 Daimler-Benz engine. However, this initial emphasis on lightness came with a major long-term compromise: structural volume. As the war progressed, the demand for heavier armament cannons, large-caliber machine guns and rockets grew exponentially. Unlike later German aircraft like the Focke-Wulf FW-190, the Bf-109's thin, efficient wing and compact fuselage lacked the internal space to absorb this increasing tactical load. This structural constraint forced the creation of the system we're discussing today, a highly granular, highly specific system of field and factory modifications. This essentially turned a single 109 airframe into a perpetually customizable platform. The early series, the E model, relied on the powerful DB601 engine, but the true high watermark for variant proliferation was the Bf-109G, the Gustav. The Gustav, or G-series, was the backbone of the Luftwaffe's fighter force for the latter half of the war, powered by the potent Daimler-Benz DB605 engine. It was here that German variant nomenclature transformed into an almost incomprehensible matrix of letters and numbers. This wasn't just Mark I to Mark II. This was a sophisticated, three-tiered designation system. However, this constant upgunning and up-engineering came at a cost. The Gustav was heavier than its predecessors. While it was faster in a straight line and could climb like a rocket, it lost some of the delicate handling and agility. The landing gear, always a tricky feature of the 109, became even more unforgiving, especially with the added weight and torque. This led to a high number of non-combat accidents, particularly with inexperienced pilots. The Gustav was a brute, a powerful interceptor designed to slash through bomber formations, but it was a much more demanding aircraft to fly well. It was a clear example of the design being pushed to its absolute limits and a compromise between performance and handling. First, you had the major series G1, G2, G6, G10 and G14 denoting fundamental airframe and engine configurations. The G1, for example, was a dedicated high-altitude fighter featuring a pressurized cockpit. The G2 was the unpressurized light fighter. The sheer variety in this category alone is remarkable. But the complexity and the genius of the adaptation lies in the suffixes, the R kits and the U kits. The U kits were factory conversion kits. These denoted minor but permanent factory redesigns. For the high-altitude G1, the U2 suffix meant the incorporation of the GM1 boost system, injecting nitrous oxide into the supercharger to temporarily increase power at extreme altitudes. Then you have the R kits. These were the field modifications, the true measure of the 109's operational flexibility. These were bolt-on kits, usually installed at operational airfields or major overhauls, that added extra functionality or weapons. Here is where the count explodes, because the G series could accept multiple R kits, combining a major series, a factory kit and a field kit, say a G6U4R6. This generated a unique functional aircraft configuration. We are talking about dozens, potentially hundreds of distinct designation combinations, all created by this modular system. What did this modularity actually allow the German forces to do in the field? Well, it allowed them to repurpose a fighter almost overnight to meet shifting tactical crises. Let's look at two prime examples of this tactical shift: firepower and reconnaissance. For firepower, the most famous R kit was the R-Type 6. This modification involved mounting to 20mm MG cannons in external underwing gondolas, while these cannons significantly increased the weight and drag, reducing the 109's agility. They transformed the aircraft from a light interceptor into a dedicated heavily armed bomber escort or a platform for anti-tank work on the Eastern Front. It was a trade-off, but one that was instantaneous and reversible, unlike a deep-level airframe redesign. On the flip side, the R kits also defined specialized roles far removed from dogfighting. Take the G-series reconnaissance variants. The G2R2 and G4R2 were specifically designated as reconnaissance fighters. Similarly, prototype adaptations included the G2R1, designated as a long-range fighter bomber Jabberet, which was kitted out with two 300-liter underwing drop tanks and a large 500 kg bomb under the fuselage. This system was a direct response to necessity, because the core design was so focused on lightness. The Germans couldn't just scale up the airframe like the Allies often could. They had to bolt the solutions onto the outside, resulting in a system that generated quantitative variance. All this at a rate unmatched by Allied fighters like the Spitfire, whose evolutionary changes were bundled into major Mach number jumps. As the war drew to a close, the final major production variant, the K-series, entered service. The K4 was, in many ways, the ultimate 109. It standardized many of the improvements seen on the late-model Gustavs and incorporated an even more powerful engine. It was the fastest of all the 109s, a last-ditch attempt to create a superior fighter to combat the overwhelming numbers of Allied aircraft. But by this stage, Germany was facing a catastrophic shortage of experienced pilots, fuel and resources. No matter how advanced the aircraft was, it couldn't turn the tide. The real jaw-dropping proof of the Bf-109's adaptable airframe came not during the war, but in the decades following its supposed retirement. When we talk about variants across all air forces, we must look at the radical, forced redesigns by its post-war operators. First, let's turn to Czechoslovakia. After the war, they acquired Bf-109 Grams 10 airframes, designating them the Avia S-99. However, stocks of the specialized Daimler-Benz engines quickly ran out. Avia was forced into a monumental engineering task, fitting the heavy, entirely unsuitable Junkers Jumo 211 engine, typically used for bombers, into the fighter airframe. This necessitated a major structural shift and created the infamous Avia S-199, nicknamed Mezek, or the Mule, due to its atrocious handling. This was a major, forced engine transplant resulting in a distinct new model. But the ultimate example of adaptation and aviation irony resides in Spain. Spain had licensed the Bf-109 airframe during the war. By the 1950s, like the Czechs, they were also out of DB engines. Their solution: replacing the inverted V12 German engine with the quintessential Allied engine, the British Rolls-Royce Merlin 545 V12. This creation was the Hispano HA1112 or Pigeon. This wasn't a minor change. The Merlin engine was taller and heavier than the Daimler-Benz, requiring a complete redesign of the nose, engine mounts, and propeller system. The Hispano was a true hybrid, a German airframe with a British heart, and it remained in operational Spanish Air Force service until 1965. It's impossible to look at the Hispano Rolls-Royce powered, German-designed fighter operating 2 decades after the war's end and not recognize the sheer engineering plasticity of the original airframe. So, when we ask which World War II fighter had the most upgrades and models, the answer, in sheer quantitative terms of unique nomenclature, must point to the Messerschmitt Bf 109. Its production of nearly 35,000 aircraft, combined with the unique modular German system of R&U kits, generated a family tree of variants that dwarfed its contemporaries during its active service life. The legacy of the Messerschmitt Bf 109 is complex. It was an instrument of a brutal regime, but from a purely engineering perspective, it was a phenomenal success. Its story is a lesson in iterative design, a masterclass in how to evolve a single platform to meet a huge variety of challenges. It went from a nimble dogfighter to a heavyweight bomber-destroyer, a ground attack aircraft and a reconnaissance platform. It fought in every theater of the war, from the frozen steppes of Russia to the scorching deserts of North Africa. Its long service life is a testament to the soundness of its original concept. Even after the war, licensed versions continued to be flown by the Spanish and Czechoslovakian air forces, a final, fascinating chapter in the story of this incredible aircraft. The Bf 109 was never one fighter. It was 1,000 different solutions to 1,000 different tactical problems, forever cementing its status as the most adaptable piston engine fighter of its generation. So what do you think? Is there another World War II airframe that had more adaptations? Let me know in the comments below. If you have enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss out on future talks. Thanks as always for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.